Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the 13th Dimension. I'm Jeremy York, your host for tonight. Scott, Tim, and Crystal are all unavailable at the moment, so you're kind of stuck with me tonight. Tonight is going to be a good topic. We are going to be talking about the Mothman. And tonight, our guest for this is fellow co-host of the Petri Dish and a co-host of Paranormal Mysteries, Mr. Nick Mulae.
Hi there.
How you doing, Nick?
Doing great. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Just busy as ever.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So what's up?
Well, not too much. I'll be honest. I mean, I think, talking about, the Mothman in this case will definitely be a very interesting topic, since I know we've, previously spoken that this is kind of like your first episode involving cryptids. So, and I think in order to make, to make this a good cryptid episode, in this case, talking about the Mothman, that's definitely a good start.
Yeah, Mothman is probably one of the more famous of the cryptids that we know of.
Oh yeah, I mean, it practically is the type of cryptid out there that, in some way, it's almost like could rival the even, I guess you can guys say, the even more famous Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we have our own Sasquatch on the team, so
won't be long before you have your own type of Mothman.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Very well, maybe. But yeah, Mothman, unlike most other cryptids, Mothman is actually very tightly tied into a piece of history, unfortunately, with tragic circumstances.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
best way I could really describe it is that out of all the cryptids and monsters out there, there's none like the Mothman. And
Right.
especially with the tragedies and disasters that follow.
Yeah, no, and to think that Mothman had been sighted in several other locations and is somewhat loosely tied to other tragedies around the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually was doing some research not too long ago, and I fortunately was able to write it down on a file that I have, that Mothman pretty much has been seen more than we have actually believed that more than what we thought. In fact, some of the things I got here, he's even said to have appeared during some of the most historic disasters, not only here in the U.S., but in other parts of the world. Like a couple examples I got here is let's see, in January of 1926, the Tnt Dam. I'm not sure if that's how I'm saying it right. It's in the southeastern foothills of China. Almost overnight, there was sightings of a black figure that they call it the man dragon, and it began to spread around the farming communities. And shortly afterwards, the dam that was in that area actually collapsed, and it killed over 16,000 people. So there were signs like that before that. There was, and some of the other most famous historical disasters that supposedly he was seen before: the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, the Hindenburg disaster of 1937, even Pearl Harbor. I mean, you can go on and on practically some of these famous disasters, both natural and man-made.
To go along with that, I even have a small list myself here. The Chernobyl disaster, 9/11. Yep. I don't know where this is at, but the I-35 West Bridge collapse.
Yeah, that's in Minnesota. That was almost 40 years after the Silver Bridge collapse. That there was a Minnesota woman claimed to had seen a Mothman-like figure just about a month before the I-35 bridge collapse, which killed 13 people. So, very similar situation as what happened also at Point Pleasant.
Yeah, the timeline would match too, because Mothman at Point Pleasant was sighted for a year up to just days before their collapse.
Yeah, before the Silver Bridge collapse of December 15th, 1967, and ironically, that the I-35 bridge was actually built that same year. So when the Silver Bridge collapsed, the I-35 bridge was under construction during that time. But of course, back in 1967, they didn't know what the future of their bridge was going to be like.
Right. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And how it happened almost 40 years after the last bridge collapse.
Okay. There was also reported of the Mothman being spotted in Mexico right before the swine flu outbreak as well.
That's correct. Yeah, he was seen supposedly before the swine flu outbreak. He was also, and another disaster that occurred in Mexico was the Mexico City earthquake of 1985. It's just amazing how, like I said, now that we're uncovering so much more about the Mothman over in the last number of years, that he's been around much long. Like I said, he's been around much longer than we really believed he was.
Yeah, I think so too, because there's a lot of theories out there about the Mothman. But before we do get into that, for our viewers out there who may not know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Well, for those that don't know me, of course, obviously my name is Nick Mulae. I'm 28 years old now. I've been a paranormal investigator now for almost 16 years, since I was 12. Obviously, not only have I done investigations on the paranormal itself, but I've also done study with ufology, cryptozoology, of course. I'm pretty much someone who pretty much extends to almost everything at this point. I'm also a member of a group called the Illinois Paranormal Force, which we run several paranormal groups here in Chicago, Illinois, and 16 years, still counting. So been enjoying it ever since.
Awesome. And then, of course, we got you on a couple of other different podcasts on this network as well.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the other thing, too. I've been on, a number of shows. Of course, I'm now with you guys on the Paranormal United Network. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on. I was pleasantly surprised when Howard said that you were going to be our fourth co-host for a Petri Dish. But at the same time, I was thinking, oh man, what is Nick getting himself into? This was right before we made the big change, the change in the format of that show.
Right. So it's probably for the best.
Yeah. And then, of course, next week, we're going to be meeting up.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Really am.
I'm looking forward to that too. I'm going to run you through the woodwork. Yeah. Okay. So I do have a list of questions here that Tim has prepared me with. And again, unfortunately, Tim and Crystal can't be here with situations beyond their control. The same thing with Scotty. Though Scott did say that he might be able to show up if he's able to later on in the show, but we'll see what happens. Otherwise, you got myself and Nick tonight. I'm sorry. So, what can you tell us about the entity itself with the Mothman? What does he look like? Do you have an idea of what the Mothman really is?
Well, from what I understand, from a lot of the sightings, and we're not just talking, obviously just in Point Pleasant, of course, also here in Chicago, as well as other parts of the country and other parts of the world. While there are some differences, most of them pretty much are similar. It's usually described, the Mothman is usually described as a bipedal winged humanoid. Despite its name, which was given to him by the newspapers, he's no way moth-like. His coloration usually varies from black, gray, white, even brown, although it's usually a darker shade. He's often usually reported to be about 5 to 7 feet tall, with a human-like body wider than a man's, usually weighing about 250 pounds, and rather than arms, he's got bat-like wings. Let's see here. I'm actually checking something else about him. His wingspan usually is about 10 to 15 feet or more, plus the ability to fly over 100 miles an hour. But despite the way how he flies, it's usually more of a glide than an actual mechanism of flying. But perhaps I guess you can kind of say the most notorious feature that most people often report is its eyes that it has. Its eyes usually, a number of witnesses usually say that the eyes usually glow red. Now, we're not exactly sure if the eyes are actually glowing, because it's typical for a lot of animals out there to see, the eyes glowing, which is the light reflecting off the eyes. But it's also difficult at the same time, because the details of his fate have never been adequately described. Only one witness has ever seen its actual face, and most people, that one person said that it was the most horrific thing they'd ever seen. So that's why, perhaps, maybe it's from a distance, or maybe it's because it's at night, you're only able to see its eyes, and it's said to also make kind of like a loud squeak type of sound.
Okay. Karma just brought up a good question. Do you think that the Mothman is interdimensional, or maybe even a demon?
That's a good question. That's something I've been trying to figure out for years, because there are so many ideas and debates of what the Mothman could be. There's these different ideas that it could either be some type of alien, a demon, or interdimensional being, or a dark angel of some sort. Even a type of shadow person, because even though it's usually been seen with its other features, it just has that black shadowy figure look. Honestly, for me, my thoughts, because again, there are just so many debates about what it could be. It could be anything at this point.
With all these debates, there's one that I haven't really seen discussed about him, and it would kind of make sense because of where the Mothman is cited, like he's trying to warn people about certain disasters coming, is that I think there may be a slight possibility that this Mothman, or whoever is portraying the Mothman, could be a time traveler.
That's actually a really good theory. That's something I've heard of before too, that it could be some type of time traveler, because like I said before, with all these disasters, you kind of wonder, could this be someone or something that could have, came from the future to warn us about some disaster that's coming up?
Yeah. Yeah, because it kind of ties in with the bridges, and especially with Chernobyl and 9/11 and some of the other places that has been, like, it's trying to warn people not to be in this area, but at the same time, it's not really saying anything to anybody, almost as if he's not. What's the word I'm trying to think of? It's sort of like the prime directive on Star Trek, where you're not supposed to interact with the people of in that case, of the planet, until they reach a certain level of society. But whereas here, you don't want to interact with people and interrupt the timeline.
Right, because that obviously could cause several changes. So, yeah, we see that in a lot of those kind of shows and movies. But I mean, but yeah, I mean, time travel has obviously been one idea of what the Mothman could also be, because you have to think, you know, when the Mothman is usually seen, he's seen, you know, obviously for a huge portion of, you know, of a year. Then all of a sudden it disappears and it's never seen again. And people always wonder, you know, where could it have gone?
Yeah, and looking at that picture behind you, I'm having a hard time believing that if the Mothman actually looked like that, that would be a time traveler from the future.
Yeah.
And it looks like it wants to go around and just kill people.
Yeah, I mean, of course, obviously a lot of the encounters, they say it has a very menacing, very intimidating appearance. And yes, it's true that this is probably what it may not actually look like. But as usual, like I said, with a lot of these sightings, it's always been reported as, like, despite that it's been reported as gray, white, brown, black. Well, yeah, like at least any of those three colors, it's always shrouded in darkness. So what you're seeing right now, probably more or less what the Mothman would look like under the night sky.
Okay. But no matter what, it's like the one thing that is constant is the red eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. These eyes are, I don't know exactly. I mean, they are. See, I've heard about this before. Like, people who've actually stared into its eyes, they always got this relatively kind of like hypnotic kind of feeling, almost like as if they feel nauseous or something. As if these eyes almost give like a bad, kind of like a bad energy to it. And another thing I find interesting about these reports is that when these witnesses say they look into the eyes, they say that also that it's a different type of red. Like, as that's their best way of describing it. It's like it's like unlike any other type of color red that they've ever seen. Just very, very unearthly looking. It's always, the other thing too is that they're always seen right where the chest would be. So it almost as if it appeared that the Mothman has no true head. It's like his face is in its chest.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. There was a question. What is your thinking on time travelers whose prime directives are to witness catastrophic events? I mean, that could very well, you know, if the theory of the time traveler is true about the Mothman or really anybody. That would be a hard thing to do for me, to go back into time and watch something happen, knowing that I could have the ability to stop it.
That is true, but also you have to realize, and again, we see this in a lot of these movies, is that if you happen to change, if you come from a different time and you happen to change something, there could be something far worse than whatever disaster may be unfolding at that point, because you never know what the future may unfold, especially in this case for like time travelers.
Yeah. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. My Wi-Fi is really wonky.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is weird.
Yeah, I may have to reset this thing, which would take me out of the stream here for a little while, leaving you all by yourself. Yeah.
And I saw there was another question earlier. Let's see, who was that asked me that? It was Karma. She was asking, do I think it could be akin to the Jersey Devil, which is another big famous cryptid, of course. That is something I've been trying to think. You know, I sometimes ask myself, you have to think, there's the Jersey Devil of New Jersey, and then there's also the one out in the Mothman in West Virginia. And if you look at the map, obviously New Jersey and West Virginia are not terribly far from apart. So there was an idea of wondering, could the Mothman and the Jersey Devil perhaps be the same type of creature? Because both creatures, you know, obviously can fight. They both have red eyes. They are usually in the 5 to 7 feet tall range. But the only difference between the two is that the Jersey Devil has been seen, has been seen even before times when there were no disasters. That's been cited since 1735. So the Mothman, I think, has been seen much longer than we've imagined. So could they be somewhat related? I'm not sure. But the features, obviously, between the two are, while there are some similar features, they also have some features that are quite different in appearance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the Jersey Devil, I've always understood it as being just a couple feet tall.
Yeah.
Whereas Mothman is really tall.
Yeah.
So most people are familiar with the Mothman from being in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but just recently, there were sightings of Mothman in your neck of the woods.
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I was wondering when I first heard about these sightings that were occurring out in Chicago. At first, there had only been 3 of them occurring around I think it was April of 2017, I believe, when we had these first 3 sightings. So it looked like at first this was just a temporary event. But then starting around the later part of that year and all throughout 2018 and up into early 2019, we had just multiple sightings that was going on throughout the city, not only just in the city of Chicago, but throughout northern Illinois, northern Indiana, southern Wisconsin, and southwestern Michigan. It was being sighted all around Lake Michigan.
Wow. Because I was reading up about it. I forget which part of Chicago it was, but it was near the O'Hare airport.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, has anything bad happened, catastrophically in Chicago in the last 4 or 5 months?
Seriously, no, but truly though, when these sightings were starting to become more active, it definitely obviously got us very nervous because we had no idea what disaster could be unfolding for us. But a lot of the investigators here in Chicago are starting to wonder because of the COVID pandemic. We started wondering,
Right.
saying, could the Mothman be here? Was trying to warn us about the pandemic because at one point here in Chicago, we did have one of the highest rates of COVID deaths. So even Chicago Haunts writer Ursula Bielski made a post in message saying, is this what the Chicago Mothman was trying to warn us about?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Anything is a possibility. I've always believed that if you can imagine it, it's a possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As far as we know, there was only one other time that we've had before even all this, there was only one other time that the Mothman was even reported here in Chicago, was actually almost about 70 years ago now. And I've not been able to find a lot of documents on this, but when I mentioned about that, he's also been seen during some of the most historic disasters. Supposedly, he was also seen before the only known strongest earthquake that's ever struck Chicago, which was back in 1951. Now, I can't find, for some odd reason, I cannot find a lot of documentation about this earthquake that struck Chicago back in 51, but supposedly they said that this actually did happen and that Mothman was seen prior to this earthquake.
Wow. One person has got a good question. With the Mothman, do you think that is just one entity, or could there be a whole species of these things?
Oh, I definitely think. See, years ago, if you asked me a number of years ago, I would have said it probably would have been one entity because every sighting has always been a single individual. But now I've been hearing that there's definitely probably more than one. In fact, one of my other investigators from my team, he said that the Mothman of Point Pleasant, as Howard,
Yeah.
the Mothman of Point Pleasant, and of course the Chicago Phantom, as it's called here, they're basically the same like individual, but they're separate species. Because in fact, there was actually one site here in Chicago where one person saw two of them flying at the same time, and he actually believed that it might have been two genders, mates, in other words, a male and female Mothman were flying together, and he couldn't really quite get a good view, like an actual good view, even though this was in broad daylight. But he knew these were bigger than hawks. They definitely had a human-like look. But there's definitely more than one entity.
Wow. I would definitely love to know where this Mothman is coming from, possibly when it's coming from. It's such, in the paranormal field, it's such a very popular story, the Mothman. And unlike the Jersey Devil, unlike Bigfoot, Yeti, Loch Ness, it's tied. It is actually tied and seems to be widely accepted to be tied into, the deaths of, what was it, like over 40 people when that bridge collapsed?
46.
Yeah. So obviously this thing is tied into history. All the others are too, in a way, but not quite like how Mothman is.
Right, and especially like with all these disasters, these tragedies, it's like, I mean, there are some people who said that he was responsible. I don't really believe that, but he really, regardless, has played a huge role in some way of these disasters and these tragedies and these huge paranormal events. Because you also have to remember that the times when Mothman was being sighted on a regular basis during, like, in Point Pleasant, there was a lot of other strange types of phenomenon that was going on. You had UFO sightings, you had alien visitations, men in black, ghostly sightings, animal mutilations, even Bigfoot sightings too. I mean, it's like, so it's kind of, in a way, kind of associated with some of these other groups where you got the Mothman in this case, and then all of a sudden all this other strange phenomenon could follow, shortly afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, and to think that they actually have conventions and I think parades about this guy.
I've been to one. I actually went to the Mothman Festival 5 years ago, which was perfect because this was 2016. It was obviously representing the 50th anniversary of the original Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, and Point Pleasant, it's just such a unique town. It's not even just about the Mothman that draws a lot of people. It's the history that's involved. I mean, and if and a lot of the locals, who've appeared on a lot of these shows, are definitely right. Like, they don't know about anyone else, but the paranormal people, they certainly love to come out to Point Pleasant. Whether something happens or not, they never leave disappointed. I'm sure one of them.
Another theory about the Mothman, besides time travel and all of those, is that it could be a government cover-up.
Right. Yeah, that's yet another one. I mean, there was a question of, could the Mothman have been some type of government experiment that might have gone terribly wrong and managed to escape? Because during the time when the Mothman craze was going on in Point Pleasant. There was, like I mentioned earlier, you had the Men in Black encounters. Like a lot of them were telling them to, keep their mouths shut. They weren't allowed to say anything about this publicly. So that, and a lot of the records that were involved in that case were confiscated and classified by the U.S. government. So the government, the government project could be another idea. There was also even a belief that the Mothman also could have been some kind of nuclear a bird mutated by nuclear waste, because it was near an old chemical, and if a bird or a bat or something might have gotten into the smoke clouds, it must have mutated into some kind of form. Again, like I said, the list goes on what the Mothman could exactly be.
Almost sounds like something that happened to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. Would it be an alien?
That's another one, an alien, because like I said, there were UFO reports. In fact, there was actually, not to partially get off track about the Mothman, there was actually a entity that was also being sighted right around the same time as when the Mothman was being sighted. It was actually in I actually have the document right here. give me a second here. Well, wait, here it is. On November 2nd of 1966, so just right before the craze actually began, 50-year-old Woodrow Derenberger of Mineral Wells, who had a similar, excuse me, I have to go back up. In October of that year, George Smith of Elizabeth, New Jersey, went to visit two teenage boys who had seen a mysterious green man-like entity. They were literally surrounded by a crowd, and they were actually walking down a turnpike area, and they saw this man that was standing on the other side of a fence near the New Jersey Turnpike. They described this man as about 5 to 7 feet tall. It was wearing like this green type of suit. Like, they don't know if it was a suit or if it was some type of skin. It had the sparkly looking look to it. And this thing, it later actually became known as the Grinning Man. And of course, obviously, these two boys, were freaked out by what they had seen. And then on November 2nd, this is where I was going to get to, Woodrow Derenberger of Mineral Wells had a similar encounter, also in New Jersey, with a strange extraterrestrial being that called itself Injured Coal, which was seen in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And supposedly, it was almost like a similar encounter to the Men in Black, let's say.
Okay. Well, I think I can very confidently say that the Mothman was not a crack dealer.
I saw that.
I can't let a comment like that go.
Wow.
Yeah. So it so we're talking about, like maybe the possible ties with the Mothman and the Jersey Devil. Do you think that there's any other cryptids out there that could possibly be tied into the Mothman? Maybe like a cousin species?
Oh, absolutely. There actually was, for the time being, a similar creature that was being seen out in Cornwall in England. About 10 years later, around late night, about 1975, 1976. It was actually, I have it right here. Beginning in April of 1976, a similar red-eyed winged being or human-like creature was being spotted several times at Monnon Church in the village of Monnon in Cornwall, England. And over there, it was it eventually became known as the Owl Man. Now, the Owl Man and West Virginia's Mothman literally have almost a similarity to description. I mean, both of them, again, are about 5 to 7 feet tall. They have they have wingspans of 10 to 15 feet. They got glowing red eyes, and they also seem to prefer wooded environments, and usually, on most occasions, was being seen out at night. But one of the other differences about the Owlman compared to the Mothman was that for some reason whatsoever, the Owlman was being seen most of the time by female witnesses. Not too many guys actually saw it, but I definitely think in some way that the Owlman could even be some type of, I guess maybe Europe's version of the Mothman. It could be related. I mean, if you took a picture of the Mothman and the Owlman and you put them together, you would completely see a complete similarity, almost a resemblance.
Okay. Did anything happen in England around that time, or like right after that time, maybe within a year or so?
Surprisingly, no. But a lot of the witnesses did say that, just like here in the U.S., the encounters that occurred were, a lot of these people said they felt just this deep impression of terror. Like in fact, one of those encounters was with two young girls. Like one was, I believe she was 12, the other was 15. They were actually allowed to camp out by themselves near the woods, and all of a sudden they heard this hissing sound, and they saw the Owlman fly up into the air. And when it eventually flew away, they ran all they literally ran all the way back home. And although no disasters occurred, they definitely did provide sketches that, again, it's almost the exact same look as what you see here in the U.S.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, seeing a sight like that, I don't care who you are, how brave you are, that would, for me, that would make me feel really uneasy, really nervous.
Yeah. Especially if you're all by yourself out in the woods at night.
Yeah. I'd be afraid I'd be one of the little critters going around in the thing, and this big hawk comes down and picks you up and takes you off. I'd be afraid that thing would do that to me. Yeah. Oh man, I'm a pretty big boy, but I think that thing would carry me and take me off into the distance. Let's see. Oh, Tim Kohler came in and said, Crystal said to say hello and thanks everybody for their thoughts and prayers. Shout out to my buddy Robert out there. Howard, he does not have the best stuff. Ronnie, I'm not sure what we were quite talking about at that particular moment. Ronnie said something about was a lot of clone stuff, a lot talked about. I'm not really sure what he's referring to.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the question too, because that's kind of a little bit hard for me. Kind of a little bit hard for me to answer that one.
Well, his comment right before that was man-made species.
Oh, the man. Oh, right. Okay. See, I'm actually looking for it right now.
This might be when you were talking about the nuclear effects.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This thing, whatever bird, or into what it is now. It's possible.
It's definitely possible, but you wonder, even if that's the explanation for it, well, how can you explain all the other sightings that have occurred over the last couple centuries?
Right. That is very true.
In fact, if you don't mind, I was going to say, in fact, if you don't mind, I'll actually read. This is the earliest sighting I ever found, because everybody always thinks that the first sightings occurred in Point Pleasant. I actually did find the earliest account that I could find of a Mothman sighting, or what is believed to be one of the first. It says, while most accounts put the Mothman's first sightings occurring in the early to mid 1960s, there were reports of what some believe to be the very first report of this creature anywhere in the world, long before he made his appearance in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, pretty much about over 100 years earlier. During the Crimean War, which raged from 1853 to 1856, was fought between Imperial Russia in the alliance of France, the United Kingdom, the Kingdom of Sardinia, and the Ottoman Empire. Let's see. I'm just going to skip ahead because there's a lot to it about the war itself. I'm just looking for the okay, so it says, as the story goes, during a vicious 6-day battle, troops from both armies realized that it was... Oh, wait. Okay, so here we go. So as night fell, a small band reported to consist of 5 Russian soldiers, 2 of them brothers. They planned to ambush. They would carry out after midnight out of modest respect for the established 24-hour truce. According to the tale, what was called the Crimean War Creatures, this band crept toward the enemy lines using the lantern light from their own camp as markers. As they neared the center of the battlefield, the skies above them turned black. The men looked up to see what the sole survivor of the event would describe as a gigantic, headless crow-like animal soaring in tight circles above them. The men reportedly were so distracted by the sight of this giant flying creature that they lost their bearing and unknowingly began to creep back toward their own camp. According to Franco-British reports, Russian sentries who were posted on the outskirts of the Russian camp mistook the dark figures for enemy troops and opened fire. 3 of the men were killed instantly, and the 4th to be killed slumped down into his brother's arms, where he slowly bled to death. The Russian sentries continued to open fire upon the group, forcing the lone survivor to use his own brother's corpse as a shield. This event was also documented in Russian North and in a much different fashion. Let's see here. The sentries disappeared there for a second. The sentries opened fire on the screaming Turkish, thinking that they were attacking soldiers, but soon saw the reason for their screams. When out of the dark, seemingly chasing the Turkish, the Russian sentries saw a gigantic swarm of bat-like creatures. According to the accounts, at midnight, the official end of the truth, the Turkish discovered their fate of their men and retaliated. A retaliation which eventually became one of the bloodiest battles in the history of the Crimean War. So that, again, it's like that type of prediction, like it was being, what is believed to have been some type of Mothman-like creature was being seen right before a huge amount of tragedy was about to be involved, in this case with the Crimean War.
Okay. No, I'm trying to do something about my Wi-Fi here. It's really messed up right now.
Yeah, I've noticed.
It's funny because even though there have been sightings over the centuries, it was never really given a name until right after the Point Pleasant disaster. And a couple of years after, actually 3 years, even though the Mothman Prophecies, a book that was written in 1975, there was actually another book written before that called The Silver Bridge in 1970, and that was what I guess you could say started the whole Mothman conspiracy.
Right, because when you think about it, after the Silver Bridge collapsed, there really truly was a connection in some type of way. Jeff Wamsley, who actually owns the Mothman Museum and has written a number of books on the Mothman. He said and shows that he's actually interviewed a few people who were actually there that day on December 15th of 1967, right before the bridge collapsed, and a lot of them said almost a similar thing, that they actually reported seeing a large winged creature flying across the river back and forth just before the collapse. And after that, most sightings, pretty much faded afterwards. There was only ever one other documented report sighting of Mothman, which occurred sometime in about almost a year after the bridge collapse in 1968. But then shortly thereafter, it just vanished.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sorry, what?
I said that was interesting.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I think I could sure understand where these conspiracies came from. And if that wasn't enough, after when the Mothman disappeared in '68, the strange phenomenon that also was occurring around the same time didn't really end until officially end until about a year later in 1969, which it seemed as if it moved from West Virginia to Virginia, but it ended with a ghastly animal mutilation. And then it's like the whole thing just closed down. And that's the other thing I think a lot of people don't seem to realize, that everybody always thinks it's from 66, 67. For the most part, it really was, the whole span really went between late 1965 up till early 1969.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, I just recently discovered that, because I mean, you would have to think that for such phenomenon to occur like that, you just can't think that it would just vanish like that so quickly. I mean, there are times that it does, but then as I continued my research on the original Mothman reports, I thought, wait a minute, I don't remember hearing about this before. And I mean, it's quite remarkable when you find new evidence that you never heard about before.
Yeah, so I just wonder if you start taking all of these reports, because I'm sure that nobody knows about all these things, but if you pull in every single report of these sightings of the Mothman, who knows? You might be able to make some kind of discovery.
It really could, yeah.
Yeah, just like what Russell Edwards did with the Jack the Ripper case.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a question.
Howard said that's because they ain't my dealer yet.
Yeah, well, we all love Howard, don't we? Okay. I guess is sort of a question. The one scene, were they tall with that type of wingspan?
That was
okay. That kind of brings me to, that kind of made me think of a question. What type of wing is closely associated with this thing? Is it more like a feathered wing of a bird, or is it like sort of like a bat wing?
Well, it's kind of both in a way. Some people have said that it has feather-like wings. There's other occasions where the wings are kind of like bat-like. I kind of almost think it could be a combination, like a hybrid kind of mix, where you may have like bat-like wings attached to this thing, and it's actually covered in feathers in a way. I mean, because a lot of the witnesses usually say that the wings are very much. I mean, I don't know if they're really feathers, but they always describe them as, like, when it spreads out, they're literally like a bird's wing. But when you see the whole thing, it has this bat-like appearance to it.
Yeah. Yes, and it's interesting that you would say hybrid, because the Mothman itself might be a hybrid of something, especially if it is like a government experiment.
Right. And it's also interesting to think, like, as I mentioned earlier, of how it flies, is that because it seems as if the Mothman's usually main means of movement is usually flying. A lot of people usually say those who have seen it actually on the ground says it seems as if it doesn't have the best means of moving on foot. They usually say it seems to kind of swerve in a way, kind of walking in a similar fashion like a penguin does. As if it kind of has almost as if it has kind of trouble, like, walking on its feet, so it relies on its wings to fly. And again, most of the witnesses say when it actually shoots up into the air, its wings actually just stay up. I mean, they rarely flap. I mean, maybe when it's getting ready to fly, but when it's actually in the air, it just leaves them up.
It's just gliding through the air.
Yeah.
Interesting. One thing I have not heard, because when this thing is seen, it is normally standing near the wooded area. Has anybody ever bothered going out and trying to get a cast of the footprints?
That is a really good question. Because when I was out in Point Pleasant, I'll be honest, I thought about bringing that type of plaster with in case I found something. Because we actually did go out to the woods the night that we were there. We even had the opportunity of going to the Tnt Bunkers. Now, it should be noted for those who want to go, not all those bunkers are openly available to the public, because some of those bunkers actually still have explosives and ammunitions from World War II when they were making these in the TNT factory. Despite that they were made, almost 80 years ago, they are still unfortunately very dangerous. They could actually still explode. So, word of caution. But the other ones that are open, when we went to Point Pleasant, I mean, just like any other investigator, I was hoping to try to find some kind of proof of the Mothman's existence. And we got to go to at least 3 of the TNT bunkers that were there. And of course, for those that are familiar with it, this was what everybody, a lot of the residents believe this was where the Mothman was hiding, during the time when the crazy Point Pleasant was going on. And definitely a very, very creepy place. I mean, it definitely is a location where pretty much any unknown type of creature could hide in. And it's interesting. Mothman, unlike most cryptids, there hasn't been very many encounters like, with people finding footprints of it. There was only ever one time. That was actually after the Scarberry Mulae incident with the 2 couples who saw it on November 15th of 1966. And the way how they described them was its tracks almost appeared as if they were kind of like, almost like horseshoe-like. I mean, most people, no one's ever really seen its actual feet. They say its legs are human-like, but its feet, I guess maybe because they're usually obscured by the darkness, or because people are so, stunned at what they're seeing that they don't really pay attention to its feet. But the footprints were described as like horseshoe-like. But of course, it was nighttime. There was a lot of strange activity going on in that area. No one had thoughts of wanting to take a plaster cast of what might have been its footprints.
Wow, so it's horseshoe-like, so that kind of tells me that it might have hooves for feet.
Just like the Jersey Devil once again. So,
yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, most people have never actually found a track of what could be the Mothman.
Okay. So you take the sightings of Point Pleasant, then you take the sightings of Chicago, and then the sightings of wherever else it was reported to have been seen. Are there anything that kind of differ between the sightings? Or are they all pretty much the same kind of reports?
I think a lot of them are similar. I mean, the only difference I can really think of is when we were having the Chicago reports, there was at least one report that I remember looking up. It was actually involving a teenage couple, and they said they saw this red-eyed winged entity that showed up out of nowhere. And even more strangely, it actually tried attacking their car. Like, it actually jumped up onto the hood of their car, made this extremely loud either hiss or a squeak of some type. I mean, this was definitely one of the if not the first real encounter where, if this was the Mothman, it was actually behaving aggressively, because most people have never said that this thing ever attacked them. I mean, it's known to chase people, but it's never actually physically attacked or destroyed anything.
Okay, I didn't even know that it's been said to chase people.
Yeah,
I thought it was always sighted from the distance, but still close enough that you could see the glowing red eyes.
Well, when the Scarberry Mulae incident occurred, the one that really kind of started it all, they I'm actually looking at the encounter right now. They said that, see, I'm just kind of scrolling through. So they were heading down when they saw this thing at the TNT factory, they were heading down the exit ramp moments later. They saw the creature again, which was standing on a hillside ridge by a large billboard near the road around a curve. As soon as the headlights hit it, it was gone. It then spread its large bat-like wings and took off into the air, which they measured its wingspan to be 10 feet, and then began chasing the car down the road, which by now was traveling at over 100 to 120 miles. But the creature was still able to follow them. They were all terrified and kept yelling for the driver to go faster. It began gliding back and forth over their car. They saw it in the back window and saw the shadow go across the car as it flew. They just had that belief like they just couldn't get away from this thing. And the last thing they remembered was that it actually was literally on top of their car, where both of its wings actually hit both sides of the car. And they heard this loud scratch on the roof. And it was later found out that I guess apparently it scratched the paint off the roof of the car.
Oh, wow.
So
now, there's going to be some kind of documentation of the damages done to that car.
That's what I'm actually been trying to figure out too, is, surprisingly, if this was, a real, like this was like some type of physical case that the Mothman, I guess, was scratching at their car, you would have thought that there's surprisingly, there are no photographs of the scratchings. I mean, there's obviously sketches of what they drew, of what they were like back when they were younger in the 60s, but there are no photographs for some reason of the scratch marks.
Man, that'd be the first thing I do, is taking all kinds of pictures.
Yeah. Well, there's also another connection to this, which I'll actually add to when they were being chased. At one point, while they were being chased down the road, they saw a large dog that was by the side of the road. To them, it looked like a big German Shepherd practically. And when they decided to go back to that area, when they brought the police along, strangely, the dog was just mysteriously gone. No blood, nothing. And that actually kind of scared them half to death, because they had no idea if this thing actually, took this dog, killed it, or whatever. But I find fascinating. But the interesting part was that about 100 miles northwest, I think, of northeastward of Point Pleasant, there was a man named Merle Partridge who had a similar encounter on the night of either November 13th, 14th, or early 15th of 1966, which was in a town called Salem, West Virginia. A man by the name of Merle Partridge, he claimed to had seen red rotating lights out in the field near his house. And he later read about an article about the red-eyed monster in Point Pleasant. But he noticed, again, there was a connection, though, because here's the weird part. His German Shepherd that he owned had ran off that same night, never to be seen again. And it's it's been, suggested, because this has been the same dog that the Scarberries and Mulaes may have seen 100 miles in Point Pleasant. And from what I remember understanding was he had a large German Shepherd hunting dog that went by the name of Bandit. The dog immediately began barking at these large red lights out in the field, and then it just darted off the porch. And no matter how hard Merle tried calling him back, the dog would just not listen. It just kept running out into a field that was adjacent to where the farm was. And although there was that one encounter with the Scarberries and Mulaes, for the most part, the dog was never seen again.
Earlier, you were talking about animal mutilations. Did it was it specific animals that were kind of mutilated, or was it just like random ones?
I think it kind of ran amongst, because it just seemed as if whether this was the Mothman or if this was, whatever else phenomenon was going on, it definitely seemed to target more of kind of like the typical like pets and livestock. And of course that scared a lot of people, because it was almost like as if it was meant to be could have been some type of warning. Once again, just like it was with the Mothman encounters, if it was some type of warning, because I think if I saw something like that, I probably would be scared for my life, because how do we not know something like that could happen to a person?
Very true. Because I remember over the years there have been many reports of cattle mutilations and it was all tied into, although without true hard evidence, but it was all attributed to alien activity.
Oh, absolutely. And you see that a lot of these things when you also have a lot of the UFO activity. There is always some type of animal mutilation that goes by. Like there's not really been one time where I've delved into research or, have heard about, some type of strange phenomenon going on in a specific town and there's no mutilations. There usually is always one or two that follow suit.
Mm-hmm. Were there ever any UFO sightings around the time that Mothman was spotted in Point Pleasant?
Oh yeah, there was. Like I said earlier about the Indrid Cold encounter, that was one of them. The UFOs, and even the same thing with the Owlman out in Cornwall, England. So it kind of goes back to, once again, could the Mothman be some type of alien? Could it be some type of associate of these UFOs? Could it even be some type of creature that actually decided to leave its ship and decide to fly on its own instead of using its ship? And there actually are creatures like that have been seen in Mexico, which later became known as flying humanoids, which they have a similar appearance. Sometimes they have wings, other times they're seen as just humans that fly. There's a lot of different theories, but yeah, Point Pleasant was during that time was a hotbed for UFO activity.
Yeah, so there could be some tie-in with that. I would love to see further studies on that to see if they might be able to definitively say Mothman might be an alien instead of just some cryptid that's hanging around in these parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's very possible.
So, the 2002 movie with Richard Gere, you think they got it right?
Well, the only thing I think I would have, I like the movie a lot. I think they definitely did well, but the way how they portrayed it, the one thing I wish they could have at least done was actually set it at the time when a lot of these sightings were occurring, which was 1960, late 1965, 66, 67, early 68. That would have been a little bit more appropriate. But the one thing that a major change was near the end of the movie when the bridge collapsed. And they said that the official death toll count was 36 instead of 46. I'm trying to remember what the reason was why they changed it to the 36 instead of 46. But I think if they actually stuck to like what really actually happened, I think that would have made the movie a lot more credible, because then you're really kind of playing of what really went on in Point Pleasant. I liked how they actually shot it in the town of Point Pleasant, but I think if they made a few of those other changes, I think it would have really stuck to the story.
My internet is messing up again.
That's no big deal. I'm actually looking up. Yeah, it says here, I actually decided to look up about the 36. It says, okay, in reality, obviously, 46 people died in the Silver Bridge collapse, not 36 as depicted in the film. The motion pictures claim at the end credits of the collapse of the Silver Bridge this is another thing, never being explained as false. The incident was found to be caused by the failure of an eye bar in a suspension chain in 1971, well before the publication of the book, which the film is based, let alone the film.
Do you think the Mockman could have caused these disasters?
That's some people say that he may have been responsible. According to most people, they say he was trying to warn. If you kind of look back into a lot of what people say about these disasters, I would say probably about 6 out of 10 would say that he was 6 or 7 out of 10. They said he was trying to warn people, and I would say then 3 out of 10 said that he was responsible for these disasters. Because aside from what I talked about earlier with the Chicago, that aggressive Chicago encounter, most people say they never actually have been actually attacked by this creature. They've been intimidated by it, but never actually been attacked.
Well, if I come across a humanoid that was 7 feet tall, had red glowing eyes, and I don't know, probably a 10-foot wingspan, I'd be pretty intimidated too.
Yeah, I probably would as well.
Yeah, because okay, so you're looking at something that is very hard to explain, and most people, if you can't explain something, or if you don't understand something, it's very easy that you're going to be confused or even scared of it.
Yeah, especially when you're crossing paths with something that you've never seen before.
Yeah,
you don't understand you don't know what its intentions are. You don't know if this thing could be aggressive. I mean, even if it's said to be a gentle giant, you don't know that because you don't know any of those type of rules, if you will. I mean, it's just like, because we always discover new species of creatures and animals all the time. I mean, even in the 21st century today, I mean, to be honest, much of the modern day world is still unexplored. So there's a lot of other creatures out there that have yet to have been discovered, and we don't know anything about them. We don't know if they're aggressive, they're dangerous, or if they're beneficial. And I think whenever we discover something that we've never seen before, our first reaction is shock, because you don't know anything about this creature. So I think it's probably safe to say, I can say that it could be the same for the Mothman.
Right, because I remember it wasn't that long ago when they discovered new species of fish way down in the depths of the ocean. And the first thing that came to my mind is, how do they survive down there with the amount of pressure of that water? Right.
Yeah. I mean, the best example I could think of something like that is the coelacanth. It was originally thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs. And then in 1938, one was found alive off the coast of South Africa, which was a huge discovery. I mean, now we know it's alive and well, even as of today. They even say this could be despite being more fish, a type of fish, they say this could actually have been some type of missing link, marking the beginning of arms and legs, if you will. So if you look at something like that, and you look at creatures like the Jersey Devil, Mothman, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Loch Ness Monster, I think it certainly does. I mean, I think it definitely does open the possibility that there are, real monsters that have yet to have been discovered.
With all the species of animals that we have out there, aside from the owl and possibly maybe even the bat because of the wings, could there be other animals that might be confused to be the Mothman?
It is true. I mean, most of the time, usually they associate bats and bats and owls of the Mothman. Well, some of the sightings of Mothman, while most of them, like I said earlier, are usually similar, some of them have also described it as like bird-like. So it could also be some other type of. It's not. It may not just be the owl, like most of the time it's usually said to be. It could also be some type of other bird, like a hawk or even an eagle of some sort. See that? Man, I'm trying to think of what else it could be, but most of the time they usually have an owl or bat as its suspects.
The only thing that I could think of, and this will kind of tie back into mythology, would be the griffin.
That is true, because with all these, because there's so many other winged humanoid creatures out there. I mean, not only just the Mothman, but I've learned that sightings of large human-like bat-like creatures have been seen just about all over the world. The only difference compared to the Mothman is that they're usually described as about usually about 5 feet tall, with black or gray skin, large bat-like leathery wings, usually reddish brownish with a wingspan, again at 10 to 15 feet, large fangs and pointed ears and monkey-like faces. And they all have different names of different countries. Like in Brazil, they're called bat people. In Mexico, there was an ancient Mayan cult that worshipped a deity known as the death bat. In Java, the rainforests there were said to inhabit a bat-like creature known as the Ahul, and in Vietnam they were known as night flyers. So there's just all these different, and even here in the U.S. I mean, in addition to the Mothman, in 1980 there was a winged creature that was being seen near Mount St. Helens, right shortly after the eruption. It later became known as the Bat Squatch.
The Bat Squatch.
Not joking. Yeah, a Bat Squatch.
Yeah, I've never heard of this one. You say that was after the eruption, not before?
I think it was. You know what? Now I'm curious. Now I got it. I've researched it before, but it's been a long time. Let's see here. Okay, so Bat Squatch is a flying cryptid that was allegedly sighted near Mount St. Helens in the 1980s. It resembles a flying primate similar to the owl and orang-bati of Southeast Asia. A witness allegedly did take several pictures of the creature. However, these pictures have not yet been analyzed, and this cannot prove the creature's existence. Now, its description is obviously different compared to the Mothman. It's said to have yellow eyes, a wolf-like muzzle, blue fur, sharp teeth, bird-like feet, and leathery bat-like wings that span up. Oh, geez, that span up to 50 feet. Geez, that's even bigger. In addition, Bat Squatch is said to be 9 feet tall and has the ability to affect car engines. Although it does say this possibly is a misunderstood sighting of Mothman, considering it also affected man-made things. Actually, yeah, it was after the eruption. Like, for example, the first sighting of it was on April of 1994. Brian Canfield was driving in Washington's Pierce County when his truck suddenly died. Canfield said a large creature landed in front of him. He said it was human-like, 9 feet tall, with bat-like wings, and also sported a coat of blue fur. Ever since then, it has not been seen. And of course, because it was only just, well, not necessarily once, well, it was one sighting at the time, it was dismissed as a hoax. But then it was sighted again, this time in California in 2009. And most recently, the most recent one was back in 2014. That was actually in Akron, Ohio. A second period Spanish class spotted a giant mass zip by the window of the classroom at incredible speed. Once again, the class claims it was about 9 feet tall with a 20 to 30 foot wingspan.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's oh my. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing. I mean, only what I'm seeing, I got nothing for the first time. That's like, wow.
30 feet wingspan, 50 feet wingspan.
I mean, that's, like I said, it's even bigger than the Mothman because its wingspan. Yeah. That wingspan is 10 to 15.
This, and this is about 6 feet. We're looking at something 5 to bigger. Oh boy.
Here, I'll see if I can try to find an image to add to the background, so that way you guys can get an idea of what it looks like, supposedly. And I think you'll probably see like a similar creature if you well, kind of like a similar look. Let's see here. Well, not really the best, but this is the only one I can really find. And unfortunately, it's standing out. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, no, this is actually a better, no, wait, I'll just use this one. It's fine. Uh-oh, wait, Jeremy? Okay. For those who are watching, Jeremy just, he has to reset his Wi-Fi. It finally, gave out, so he'll be back shortly. So while he's doing that, I'm gonna get my the image ready for him so he can come back. I don't know if this is gonna. Okay, hopefully he'll be back soon. All right, we'll just give him a minute, and hopefully he'll come back while I'm getting the image ready. Let's see. All right, this is the only image I could find that's going to be able to fit the background. Kind of a wacky picture too, but this is the best I could find. All right. All right, Jeremy, I'm all ready to go, but you kind of disappeared on me. So try logging back in. Yeah, it kind of does look like a dragon, if you will. Hang on, I'm getting a hold of him right now. Oh, he'll be able to get back in. All right, guys, just give him about a minute, and hopefully he'll come back in. Okay, so what I'll explain then, while he's getting his connection back on, you can clearly see, obviously. Sorry, I know it's trying to get a good way, trying to give a good view of it. Once again, just like it is with the Mothman, you can clearly see that it has a somewhat similar appearance to it. It does have the bat wings. You can obviously see this mountain here. I guess is supposed to represent Mount St. Helens, of course, because this was being shot in Washington. But the face, if you can see it, that is, it does. Oh, this is even better. You can obviously see this is kind of more of a, unlike the Mothman, because most people have never really seen its actual face. You can see this has more of like a bat-like, almost. Most encounters say it's actually more ape, almost wolf-like, if you will, but it does have that snout, as you can see. So, hopefully, I'm not exactly sure how else I could really describe it, but hopefully, Jeremy will get back in soon. Okay, I'm going to see if I can find something else. See if I can find anything else about the bat squatch. All right. Well, then I guess while we're still waiting for him, so there were only ever 3 actual reported sightings of the bat squatch itself. I know I didn't really mention about the second one. I mentioned about the first and third. It says that a possible second sighting was reported in 2009 near Mount Shasta, I think that's how you say it, in California. Several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings, once again spanning 50 feet, fly out of a crevice in the mountain. Excuse me. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. Upon reconsideration, the witness claimed it was more akin to a bat or a fox. And I think I saw someone. Yeah, Jody, you're right. It was just like as I is like you said, it does have like a fly, kind of does have like that flying fox like appearance. Now, of course, with the bat squatch compared to the Mothman, my only guess of what the hang on a second, let me see if he got back soon. My only guess of what the bat squatch could possibly be is that, I mean, for a bat that's got a 50-foot wingspan, or 30 in some cases. Here we go. Now he's back. Yep. There we go. I was going to say, I don't know what happened.
My Wi-Fi finally crapped out on me. I had to completely reset the modem again.
Well, while I was waiting, I was actually looking for that bat squatch image anyway. But this was the best one I could come up with that I was actually pointing outwards.
Wow.
So supposedly this is what this creature was said to look like when it was being seen, and you could see it's just massive. I have to kind of turn because the shadow.
With the exception of the
course,
face,
obviously,
like the creeper.
It kind of does. I mean, and you can see clearly. I guess that mount's supposed to be Mount St. Helens, since that was where the first reported sighting was of bat squatch. I mean, I'm actually surprised it has not been considered like the Mothman of the West, since Mothman was seen in Point Pleasant.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, of course, I had to go get myself some drinks. I was out. I might as well do something since I was waiting on everything to reset. I can't get online or nothing. There is one thing that interested me. I actually came across earlier today. Back in June of last year, there was actually a petition going around, particularly in the southern states, to have all the Confederate statues replaced with the Mothman statue.
Oh, really? I don't remember hearing anything about that before. That's neat.
It started in June of last year, and in less than a month, they had up to 2,000 signatures. And then when I was looking at it about 5 hours ago, it was up to 4,400 signatures.
Oh my God!
And the goal was to get 5,000.
Well, they're definitely more than halfway up. Just a few hundred left before they sign it.
Yeah, no, it very interesting because can you imagine the kids? The future.
Wait, can you say that again? Because you did get frozen there for a second. Oh boy, I think we might have lost him again. Jeremy, you're right over there. Looks like we lost you again. Yep, we just lost him. Looks like he had another connection problem. Where'd you go? I hope your connection didn't go out again. We just lost Jeremy. Where'd you go, Jeremy? All right, Jeremy, you kind of disappeared once again. Hopefully you'll be coming back in. I didn't really have a backup plan for this. There we go. I don't know what happened.
I don't know either. Just that everything just froze up on me.
Yeah, I mean, you were about to say something, then all of a sudden you froze, and then I wasn't sure what to do.
I don't know. I mean, before when this show started, months ago, Wi-Fi was fine unless Scotty had his laptop and his phone on. But tonight it's just me.
Yeah.
And I've been having serious Wi-Fi issues these last few weeks, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I've been having Wi-Fi issues too. So I mean earlier today when I was on Paranormal Mysteries, I mean there was one. Well, fortunately not when we were on live, but I had to log out briefly just to come back in. So that's just it can be maddening, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it really sucks when it's in the middle of your show.
Yeah, and especially when that happens, you're not sure what to do when you're still on the show.
Maybe the Mothman is messing with my electricity.
Maybe, like we were talking about earlier, it does affect electrical items and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't understand how the Mothman can affect car engines. There's got to be something in play for it to be able to affect electronics like that.
Right. Well, it's not even just cars. When I mentioned earlier about the Merle Partridge sighting out in Salem, West Virginia with a dog, right before he saw the red lights, he let's see here. I got it. I'm actually scrolling through. Said it was about 10:30 p.m. that night, and suddenly, because he was sitting in his family in his living room watching television, and suddenly the TV went dark, and then there was this real fine, weird herringbone pattern that appeared on the television at the same time. The set started a loud, high-pitched whining noise, peaking and breaking off as if you were on a musical scale and you went as high as you could and came back down and repeated it. In other words, he said it sounded like a generator was winding up. So it seems like it really affects not only just cars, but different types of electronics. And Dave Wismer was watching. That's another thing I forgot to mention earlier. To point out what he said. Yes, the Mothman has even been seen supposedly before the Great Chicago Fire of 1871.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've never actually. I mean, I have not found any actual sightings like accounts of people who said they saw something before that. But once again, with all these disasters, I do think it's highly possible that so actually, I should correct myself. He's probably been around this area at least 3 times prior to the Chicago Fire, the supposed earthquake that occurred back in 1951, and now most likely the COVID pandemic.
Well, it would make sense. Mothman is showing up before all of these disasters, whether they're man-made or natural disasters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, help if this Mothman shows up in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Karma just said they are watchers, possible Eternals, maybe?
Eternals? Yeah, I'm not. It could be. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but I will say this. And this is probably as close. I mean, I think it's probably important that I should mention this, that I've never really had an actual encounter with the Mothman myself. I mean, of course, obviously, I've investigated the sightings, but I guess maybe in some way the Watcher maybe definitely is possible because
it makes sense.
Yeah, well, 2 years ago, my dad and I were actually driving up to I think it was it a Christmas party or something? We were heading over to my aunt's, and my aunt, who lives very close to the O'Hare Airport area, which at the time that was one of the most recent sightings of the Chicago Phantom was being seen. Now, although nothing actually happened, when we were driving back and forth, to my aunt's house and back home, I had probably the most bizarre dream I think I ever had. I mean, literally in my life. I mean, this was kind of more of a dream encounter, if you will. See, I don't exactly recall a lot of what this, because there's also been a few people who said they've had dreams of this entity kind of entering their minds, if you will, like knowing that they're being watched or, you know, something's kind of stalking them. That's kind of like what it was for me. And in the dream, I don't really recall exactly what was going on. I guess it was like in this basically deep black abyss. That's the only way I could describe it. I can't really tell if this was supposed to be outside or in some kind of cave or whatever. And all of a sudden there's this thing that's like standing right in front of me. And I think it was some type, I mean, to this day, I still think it was some type of dream encounter with the Mothman. It had the exact same descriptions. It had this huge wingspan. I couldn't see its face too well. It was black, like pitch black in color. I don't know if it was because if it was dark or if that was its actual color. But just like all these other sightings, I saw in the dream, I still can picture those red eyes. And although that was 2 years ago, I actually made it. I'm not much of a sketcher, but I actually made a drawing of it while the memory was still fresh. So let me get that out, and you'll see quite a resemblance to all these other sightings. This is the actual sketch I made.
Wow. Okay. Bat wings, red eyes.
Yeah. And like I said, normally I'm someone who does not really draw or sketch a lot, but it was almost as if I was feeling like something was compelling me to make a drawing out of that. So, but that is the original drawing. And even though it's just a simple drawing, it's still quite intimidating.
It would be.
Yeah.
Very similar to that design right behind you.
Exactly. Yeah. I was actually going to say, you can kind of see the resemblance to it.
Yep.
I'm trying to get it so that way the brightness is not showing up. But yeah, it's just almost the exact same description. And I even said when I first posted about it on Facebook, I said, was this the Mothman? I mean, honestly, at the time I had no idea. I mean, I still really don't know entirely. But whatever basically had occurred in that dream that night, there obviously was some connection to when we passed by O'Hare Airport, like almost like an attachment, if you will, not in person, but like in a dream. And you know what it was. I mean, was it trying to send a message? Again, I'm not sure, but I even said at the time that what it was, or what it was trying to tell me. I was thinking, I don't know if I want to know or think about it. And so that's why I usually often said, now then you folks can think about it.
See, what kind of surprises me with the Mothman is that every picture or drawing that I've seen of it, it's only had wings, no arms. So, and Ronnie was saying in the chat just a couple of minutes ago that if it can manipulate the electromagnetic field, it would be crazy. Nothing could stop it. So my thing is, okay, how is it manipulating the field? It's got to be able to have some sort of a device, because I can't see the entity itself being able to manipulate it. It's got to have some kind of a device to be able to do so. And in order to be able to use this device, I would like to think that it would have arms and hands, or something like that, to be able to use such a device to affect our stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was with the electronic, with a lot of the manipulations of the electronics, I've been trying to figure that out myself. Like, what is it doing exactly to cause these malfunctions in the electromagnetic field? I mean, I honestly thought maybe it was either surrounding the entire figure. Maybe there was some kind of force field or something that may affect wherever it goes. But
it could.
That could be one idea. I definitely think the device could be. But yeah, I mean, if it doesn't have arms, and especially since we've never actually seen its feet, how is it able to grasp? And of course, not to mention, no one's ever seen really its mouth. How is it able to grasp things? Yeah, well, like, how does it grasp things? You got to use something to hold on to something like a device in this case.
Yeah.
And Karma said there's another one. It feeds. It could also feed off of it.
So there's definitely something into play that, for whatever reason, is not being reported.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I mean, like I said, I mean, what the reason is for these malfunctions. I mean, and you don't just see it again with the Mothman, like we said earlier. The Bad Squatch did the same thing, and there was also another creature down in.
That's a funny name.
I know it is. They really is.
Sorry, I got it.
No. It's funny too. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
There was another. There was even another monster that kind of had that same effect. Sorry, I just saw something fell off my desk. Pick it up later. There was another creature like that had similar effects to whoever got close in contact with, which was also cited in West Virginia, which was known as the Flatwoods Monster, which was down, I think it's about 2 hours southwest of Point Pleasant. Might be a little bit further down. I mean, actually, no, I think it's northeast. And similar situation with that. I mean, it's not a winged creature. It was reported to be kind of more robotic, reptilian even. And there was one encounter where they were driving out near an open road in the backwoods area of West Virginia, and for some reason the car just suddenly went dead. So it has that same type of effect feeling.
So it's almost like there's an EM. Oh, what was that? What's that thing that's supposed to be able to shut everything down, like an EM pump or pulse or something like that?
Oh yeah, like it's the EM pump. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's almost like something similar to that is being used. David said a few minutes ago that he was seen on a bridge in Iowa in, I think, 1972. The night before the bridge it was on collapsed, killing around 30 people.
I've never heard of this one before. That's
I have not.
1972 Iowa bridge collapse.
I'm guessing that's what he's trying to say. It said I think 72, so I'm guessing he's using voice to text, and it came out as that when he's trying to say 1972.
I'm not seeing anything out in Iowa, but here I'll just type in 1972 bridge collapse. Well, the only one I was able to find that occurred during that year, looks like, fortunately, there wasn't really that many. First one that popped up, of course, was Silver Bridge. I'm scrolling through all the years practically. There were only two bridge collapses that occurred. One of them was only in the United States. The first one I found was actually occurred in Farum. I don't know if that's how you say it. Out in Denmark on February 8th, 1972. Looks like, well, nobody was killed from that one, not even injured. And then the other one was the Sidney Lanier Bridge, which was out in Brunswick, Georgia, on November 7th of that year. The only difference was that it didn't necessarily collapse. It was struck by the freighter African Neptune, and only 10 people were killed. There were multiple.
By what?
The what?
It was struck by what?
The freighter, a freighter that was called the African Neptune.
Oh,
yeah.
I was gonna. Whoa, wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah, that's the only bridge collapse that occurred in the U.S. that year, but it didn't kill. It killed 10 people, but not 30.
Okay, so all right. David, if you're still with us, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what you were saying there. Karma just said, do you think that the hypnotic effect, it is reputed to have to have would be part of the process of drawing a person into its personal energy field?
Oh wow. Uh, oh yeah. Just before I answer it, Dave just got it. The Silver Bridge. That was 1967.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I guess. Yeah. He must have been using some type of talk to text or something like that. Okay. But to answer Karma's question, oh man, that's a good one. This one I'm gonna have some difficulty to answer. I think it could have some type of part because like you see in a lot of these encounters where you have, like in this case, like we were just talking about, the cars shutting down, or like with Merle Partridge when his TV was acting weird, and he decided to go out and investigate, see what the problem is. I mean, yes, originally they're just going out to see what's causing the issues, and then all of a sudden they'll see something that they've not seen previously, like an unknown entity.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as whether it's Mothman or the Flatwoods Monster or Bad Squatch.
I'm going to do some more research on Bat Squatch.
Yeah. Or even the injury cold case. It's almost like as if their intention is to like kind of cause these malfunctions so people can not only get out and they'll think that they're getting out to figure out the technical issues, but really it's like when they get out and try to figure out what's going on, they it's like that's their intention, like as if they're drawing them in. They're going to be led under the assumption that they're going to get out of their car, fix their issue, and just before they do that, boom, there's something like right in front of them, like as if they're asking to be seen.
Wow.
That's just my point of view, though.
I would like to say, with all of the things that are still left unanswered, especially concerning around the appearance of Mothman, is I think whoever sights this thing anywhere, and if by chance, small miracle, they happen to be watching this show, is I would like for them to take a look around Mothman, not necessarily look at it, but look around and see if there's anything else that's out of place with it.
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, I gave it a description. That's like I said with this Merle Partridge dog. Like when they found this dog by the side of the road, I think obviously they probably would have thought, they're out in the middle of the woods. There shouldn't be a dog lying, and there were no houses around. And you have to remember, like I said, Merle Partridge, who lived in Salem, West Virginia, that was 100 miles northeast. So there shouldn't have been any type. I mean, if it would be one thing if it was like a deer or some other type of woodland critter, but it would be something else to have a dog just kind of randomly lay by the side of the road, just like that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh boy, I can't think of any more questions here. Now, David is correcting everything what he was saying. That is, the Silver Bridge. That he's saying it was Ohio, not Iowa.
Well,
I can, yeah.
Well,
because Iowa was on the other side of that river.
Well, actually, I was going to say it was
Ohio.
I was going to say. Actually, it was kind of both Ohio. It was right between the border of Ohio, West Virginia, because that's where the bridge was connected. So it was both West Virginia and Ohio.
Which is why weeks ago when we started talking about this, I kept saying Ohio because I was thinking Ohio.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, it should be noted once again, there was in fact, when I mentioned about how there was even a sighting of Mothman in 65, it actually says here, and I have the sighting right here. The first sighting which received publicity, though, like the one that actually got more attention, well, not necessarily more attention than what the Scarberry Mulae incident did, was, it doesn't say exactly when, but it says in 1965. There was a woman who was living near the Ohio River a few miles from Clendenin, I think that's how you say it, West Virginia, She related how her 7-year-old son ran into the house one day and excitedly of seeing an angel outside. She assumed it was just his imagination and thought no more about it until the next year when Mothman sightings started being reported in Point Pleasant. And then before that too, the following year, just before the November sightings, in the summer of that year, there was a doctor's wife in the same general area in the Ohio Valley, was in her backyard and said that she had seen a 6-foot-long creature that soared past her very rapidly. Unlike most encounters, although we always say it's not really moth-like, it was one of the few times where she said it did actually resemble a giant butterfly, and only mentioned it to a few people because, yeah, if you remember, again, 1966, there were, you told the whole town about it, they throw you into an asylum for that.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, okay, so all of these sightings with the Mothman, have all of them taken place after dark, after the sun has set?
Actually, no. It has been seen during the day.
Has it?
I mean,
because I was wondering about that because it's always dark. So all of these pictures that are coming in with the Mothman are dark. And when that one report that you were just talking about, where it's almost angel-like,
right?
Even white shows up kind of dark after dark.
Yeah, it does. So it would be in contrast to the darkness surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I mean, yes, I mean, while most sightings usually occur after dark, it doesn't seem as if the Mothman is restricted to just the nighttime hours. So we could probably say that this is no way, in fact, a nocturnal type creature, because it has been seen during the day. In fact, I mean, I'm going to read just one more sign. This is probably the best one I could think of a daylight encounter. And this was the one report where this person actually saw this creature's face. On the morning of November 27th, 18-year-old Connie Carpenter, I think she's still alive, in fact, was driving home from church at around 10:30 a.m. when as she passed the Mason County Golf Course outside of New Haven, she saw a grayish figure standing on the golf course. It was shaped like a man, she said, but much larger, at least 7 feet tall and very broad. But what attracted her attention the most was not its size, but once again, its eyes. It had said she said they were large, round, fiery, red glowing eyes that focused on her with a hypnotic effect. It's a wonder I didn't run off the road and have a wreck, she commented later. As she slowed, her eyes fixed on the apparition. A pair of wings unfolded from its back. They seemed to have a span of about 10 feet. It was definitely not an ordinary bird, but a man-shaped thing. The Mothman rose slowly off the ground, straight up like a helicopter, silently. Its wings did not flap in flight, and flew straight towards her car. Its horrible eyes fixed her. She was the only one who actually saw the creature's face, although her description, it was horrible. Like something out of a science fiction movie, doesn't help much. The creature then swooped low over her head as she quickly stepped on the gas and drove home at high speed in hysteria. She later locked herself in her bedroom as soon as she arrived. Those eyes, that's all she'd ever say was those eyes, her boyfriend would later say. She was so upset that she was unable to go to school for several days and required medical attention. She was one of several witnesses to suffer and later develop an ailment called conjunctivitis or eye burn. It's something like it. Her eyes were red, swollen, itchy with water coming out of them, which lasted over
her eyes.
Her eyes, yeah. They apparently were. It was apparently caused by the glowing red eyes. Now, in 2001, when they did the Search for the Mothman documentary, she was still unable to talk about it. Her husband, Keith, who was her boyfriend at the time of the sighting, told her story to try and set the record straight. In the interview, he said, "I'd like people just to understand that I'm here to make sure they don't think she's a kook, because she's not. And what she has said she's seen, she's actually seen." He went on to say, "The only thing I have to say is keep an open mind, because someday it could happen to you. And if you try to tell somebody what you are going to do, if they laugh at you or if they'll call you a kook, that you're imagining or that you're trying to cause chaos, but it actually did happen. What if? And it's a big question. So even years later, she still cannot talk about that whole, you know, she never even made a sketch of what this face actually looks like.
Only just a description that it is so horrifying.
Just an absolute horrifying appearance. I mean, never gave any similarities, like if it was had similar a face similar to, like, you know, whether it was human-like, was it bird-like, bat-like, animal-like. She said nothing. She just said it was just absolutely horrific.
And the fact, okay, so it's 10:30 a.m. So the sun is very high up in the sky, and she sees this thing, and she's still able to describe glowing red eyes.
Yeah, that's actually, now we're actually talking about that part. I mentioned earlier, while there are some cases where they say sometimes the eyes actually just may be just reflecting off the light, this kid basically saw this thing in broad daylight, and yet its eyes were still glowing red. So that probably and I'm pretty sure at this point, if it's focusing on her, there's no way that could be the sun's rays reflecting off it. Because if it's looking down, if it's 7 feet tall, it's looking down upon her.
Yeah.
So that means that
and the sun is up.
The sun is up, and most likely its head is probably, I mean, most likely the sun is probably away, like behind its head. So
it could be.
It could be. There's
the direction that it was going.
Yeah, and there was no. She was out in the middle of a golf course. There was no other buildings or anything or street lights that could have caused it. So it was almost appeared as if the eyes were not really reflecting, but more or less kind of glowing off their own energy.
Yeah, it's emitting its own light somehow.
And that's one of the few times I've heard of any creature out there, cryptid out there, where its eyes continue to glow even during the daylight hours.
Yeah. Okay, one final question before we go, because we're starting to run out of time. Karma was asking, are there valid reports of mind-to-mind communication between the Mothman and the witnesses?
Yes. Supposedly, yes, let's say that. There's been a number of people out there who say that they have been telepathically, although the Mothman itself is known to make these loud squeak sounds, some of these witnesses said that this creature actually telepathically communicates with them. I'm actually looking, I got a few cases right here in front of me. I'm just looking for, in fact, you know what? It would take too long for me to look for, so I'm just going to look for the one that is kind of the most famous with Linda Scarberry. She said in a report that, oh man, where is it? I know I had it before. Wait a minute, I could have sworn I had I had a really good part of what she talked about with the Mothman report. With the supposed communications. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it in time, but there's definitely some type of communication that goes on, because when people actually see this creature, it almost gives that feeling as if it's making some type of attempt to communicate with them. They don't know exactly what it's trying to tell them. Again, it could be that warning effect, as we mentioned earlier. There's just so many ideas of what it actually could be trying to tell people.
So if it's trying to do like telepathy communication, maybe one day we'll get lucky and the person that witnesses it is a medium.
Yeah, I found it. It's all right. Okay, so here it is. Sadly, Linda Scarberry, she was really the only one who actually was willing to talk about her story on different shows. First off, she's no longer with us. She died back, actually, 10 years ago almost now, March 6, 2011, when she died at the age of 63. But before she died, she claimed that she and her husband had seen the Mothman many times after their original encounter, sometimes at close range. What's that?
Many times.
Many times, yeah, sometimes at close range. And she says it seems like it doesn't, despite its terrifying appearance, it seems like it doesn't want to hurt you. It just wants to communicate with you. That was pretty much one of her. I think that was actually one of her final interviews that she said about it before she like I said, she died 10 years ago at the age of 63 after a brief battle with cancer. So sadly, she's no longer with us. But she was the one. She was really the one who really spoke about her story on many different documentaries.
So maybe next time somebody does come across it, sees it, and is trying to come to that person and communicate, maybe this person will be able to get beyond how horrifying this thing looks and actually try to establish some kind of communication with it and finally find out what its purpose is. Why are you here?
Right. Well, it could be the same with my dream encounter, because I couldn't understand what was going on in the dream. It could have been some type of message. I mean, that's what compelled me to write this that drawing. Like, it's not just simply something I wanted to have to remember, but there's some type of message to it. In my point of view. And it's also the same thing for, like, I was just talking about the Connie Carpenter incident, where she had a up close personal encounter of the Mothman in broad daylight. And although it was, extremely horrifying her, it, once again, seeing how close it got, it could have been some type of form of communication. So, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like that.
So if you're trying to do telepathic communication to somebody, it would stand to reason maybe is trying to reach out to somebody in their dreams.
Very possible.
You could very well be not the only person who's had dreams of this, but haven't stepped forward.
Right. Yeah. And that's totally true, because, like, when you look at, if you look at the sightings that occurred back in the 60s in Point Pleasant, there was about over 100 sightings of the Mothman throughout Point Pleasant in eastern Ohio. But I honestly, truly believe that there were still at least another 100 reports that never really went to the authorities, afraid because they were afraid of being, ridiculed or made fun of or humiliated in any those type of ways.
Institutionalized.
Yeah, or the Men in Black situations. They always were told to keep their mouth. Like I said, they were the most notorious of them. To make a long story short, was someone by the name of Mary Hire. She was actually someone who worked for the local newspaper out in Athens, Ohio, but did have an office in Point Pleasant, and she documented a lot of the reports. And a few times she actually did get a few visits from the Men in Black. They were trying to get her attention. They were trying to intimidate her, saying, you need to stop making these newspaper reports. But she never really did. And strangely, though, Mary Hire died in 1970 at the age of, I think it was the age of 46, I believe. It was kind of a mysterious death, but I think they later found out it was some type of illness that she had. So it's kind of bizarre, too, how she...
Suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually something, to kind of close this off, there's actually something known as the Mothman Death Curse. 84 people who have been involved with the sightings, the research, anything connection, any of that kind of stuff, have died because of their association with Mothman. And 46 of those were the ones that those who died on the Silver Bridge collapse.
Wow.
And Mary Hire, too.
Wow. And on that note, we've run out of time, even though it's still getting very interesting, this conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll probably have to bring you back. I know you'll be back on this show again eventually.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to bring you back on to continue this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Part two.
Oh, absolutely. And, during that time, because I'm actually somewhat behind on the sightings here in Chicago as well as some other areas. Mm-hmm. I got to also catch up on, the latest ones I got are from 2018, but I got to catch up because a lot of the stuff I get from Lon Strickler of MUFON himself, not any way to take credit, but just to keep up with all the sightings so I can keep them documented myself. So that way, I guess in some way it's like I'm kind of also serving for, considering I'm from Chicago myself, right. It would be more appropriate for it. To kind of keep an eye on the encounter. So I'm going to start catching up, and hopefully I can find something remarkable for next time.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll definitely have to get that scheduled. Meanwhile, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, of course, always.
As always, it is a pleasure having you on here. For those of you who are still watching us, thank you for joining us. And next week is going to be another exciting one. We will be having. See if, as soon as I can pull it up here. There we go. So next week we will be having this lady on the show.
Oh, wow.
Jackson Lockwood out of the UK, and we will be talking to her about her paranormal experiences. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing this lady on the Paranormal Swamp Talk when I was a guest host on Howard's show. Jennifer, for whatever reason, wasn't able to make it, so I stepped in. And next week we're going to have her on this show, so I'm really excited about that. And hopefully there will be more than just me.
Yeah, well, that will definitely be a fun show because, like, as you know, when I also co-host with Tom and Amy from Paranormal Mysteries, whenever we have people out from the UK and other parts of Europe, it's really exciting then because then you're really, as we've spoken previously, you're extending, to a worldwide progress.
Yes. So, meanwhile, thank you for those of you who have been with us throughout the whole show. Sorry about my little Wi-Fi incident. Hopefully, Nick was able to keep you entertained.
The only thing I could tell him was because I read the first and third sightings of Bat Squatch. The only one I could do was just read the second one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, Nick, for being on the show tonight. We will definitely get you rescheduled. And for all of you guys out there, if it's paranormal or beyond, we've got it covered. Have a good night, guys.